Invisible wings. The espresso machine hissed as Zara Jensen wiped down the counter for the fifth time that hour. Her movements were methodical, practiced from the 10 months she'd worked at the Copper Cup, a trendy cafe nestled between high-end boutiques in downtown Portland. At 32, with her chestnut hair pulled back in a practical bun and minimal makeup highlighting her naturally striking features, she blended into the background exactly as she preferred. Another masterpiece hiding in that sketchbook? Olivia, her co-worker, nodded toward the leather-bound book peeking from Zara's bag. Zara shrugged, attempting nonchalance. Just doodles. Your doodles belong in galleries, not hidden away, Olivia insisted, adjusting her bright blue glasses. I still don't understand why you're slinging lattes instead of selling those designs. The bell above the door chimed, saving Zara from responding. She recognized the customer immediately, the Tuesday regular who arrived precisely at 2:15 p.m., ordered a black Americano, and worked silently in the corner for exactly 90 minutes. Dark hair with slight silver at the temples, impeccable charcoal suits, and intense focus on his laptop screen. The staff had nicknamed him Mr. Punctual. Americano for... Zara began the routine. Damien, he supplied, his voice carrying the subtle resonance of someone accustomed to being heard. Damien Frost. It was the first time he'd offered his full name in the 6 weeks he'd been coming. His gaze lingered on her longer than usual, and Zara felt a strange flutter of discomfort. Not because he was intimidating, though his obvious wealth and composure could certainly intimidate, but because he seemed to actually see her. Coming right up, Mr. Frost, she replied, turning to the espresso machine. As she prepared his drink, her fingers moved with the same precision they once did when crafting delicate silver filigree and setting stones. Before Richard had systematically convinced her that her jewelry designs were amateur, unmarketable, worthless, just like her. Before the divorce that left her with nothing but debt and shattered confidence. You have a jeweler's hands, Damien observed when she handed him the cup, his comment so unexpected that Zara nearly dropped the drink. What? Your hands. The way you handle things with such precise care. It reminds me of master jewelers I've worked with. His eyes, a startling shade of blue-gray, assessed her with calm interest. Am I wrong? The question hung between them as other customers queued behind him. Zara's throat tightened. No one had noticed that about her in years. Richard had made sure her identity as a designer was thoroughly erased. Just good barista technique, she deflected, forcing a professional smile. Enjoy your coffee. He nodded, leaving a generous tip before taking his usual corner seat. For the next hour, Zara felt his occasional glance, but busied herself with customers. When the afternoon lull finally arrived, she took her break, retreating to a back table with her sketchbook. The designs flowed from her pencil almost of their own accord. A delicate pendant inspired by fallen leaves, earrings that captured the spiral movement of water. She lost herself in the creation, forgetting where she was until a shadow fell across her page. These are extraordinary, Damien said, standing beside her table. Zara slammed the sketchbook shut, heart racing. I'm sorry, but those are private. Private masterpieces are a tragedy, he replied, not backing away. Those designs, the asymmetrical balance, the organic flow within structured forms, they're revolutionary. His words echoed with the validation she'd been denied for so long. Suspicion flared. What do you know about jewelry design? She challenged. A slight smile curved his lips as he placed a business card on her table. Perhaps more than most. I'd like to discuss your work, professionally, if you're interested. Zara glanced at the card and felt the blood drain from her face. Damien Frost, CEO, Frost Enterprises, one of the largest luxury brand conglomerates in North America. Their jewelry division alone did billions in annual revenue. This isn't funny, she whispered. I'm not joking, Ms. Jensen. His expression was serious now. "I recognize exceptional talent, and yours has been hiding in plain sight." "My ex-husband," she began, then stopped herself. Why was she explaining anything to this stranger? "Would likely have much to regret if he discouraged this level of artistry," Damien finished for her, his perception uncomfortably accurate. "Sometimes the people closest to us are the least equipped to recognize our value." The timer on Zara's phone buzzed, signaling the end of her break. She rose, clutching her sketchbook to her chest like armor. "I need to get back to work." Damien nodded, stepping aside. "Of course, but I'll be here next Tuesday, same time. Think about it, Ms. Jensen. Talent like yours deserves to shine, not hide." As he gathered his belongings and left, Zara slipped his business card into her sketchbook, telling herself she would throw it away later. But that night, in her small apartment, she found herself researching Frost Enterprises, discovering their commitment to supporting independent designers and ethical sourcing practices. She pulled out designs she hadn't shown anyone in years, spread them across her kitchen table, and for the first time since Richard had crushed her dreams, Zara allowed herself to wonder, what if? What if someone actually valued what she could create? What if the voice telling her she was worth the proposition? For the next week, Zara found herself restless with anticipation. The business card from Damien Frost seemed to radiate energy from where she'd tucked it into her mirror frame. Each morning, she'd trace her fingers over the embossed lettering, wondering if his interest had been genuine or merely a passing curiosity. By Monday, she'd convinced herself it was the latter. Powerful executives didn't discover talent in coffee shops. They certainly didn't return to make good on casual offers. "You're distracted today," Olivia noted, as Zara nearly overfilled a customer's latte. "Something happened with Mr. Punctual?" "Don't be ridiculous," Zara replied, but the heat rising to her cheeks betrayed her. "He's just a customer." "A customer who's a billionaire CEO and couldn't take his eyes off you last week," Olivia countered with a knowing smile. "I looked him up. Frost Enterprises is massive. Fashion, jewelry, hotels, and he's been running it solo since his fiancée left him at the altar 3 years ago." "You're impossible," Zara laughed, but filed away the information despite herself. Tuesday arrived with uncharacteristic Portland sunshine, brightening the cafe's exposed brick interior. At 2:10, Zara found herself glancing repeatedly at the door. By 2:25, she'd resigned herself to disappointment, until the bell chimed and Damien walked in, this time wearing a navy suit that made his eyes appear even more striking. "Americano?" she asked, maintaining professional distance. "Please." He smiled, a genuine expression that softened his usually serious demeanor. "And perhaps a moment of your time if your schedule allows." Zara hesitated, then nodded toward the clock. "My break's at 3. For the next 40 minutes, she worked with heightened awareness of his presence, catching him watching her several times. When 3 o'clock arrived, she removed her apron, grabbed her sketchbook, and approached his table with more confidence than she felt. "I've brought some of my designs," she said without preamble, sliding into the chair opposite him. "If you were serious about discussing them professionally..." Damien closed his laptop immediately. "I'm always serious about business, Miss Jensen." "Zara," she corrected, opening her sketchbook to reveal not just sketches but photographs of pieces she'd created years before. "These were from my collection before I stopped designing." Damien examined each page with careful attention, occasionally asking questions about techniques or materials. His knowledge was extensive, surprising Zara with its depth. "This pendant design, the interconnected circles with the gradient stones, it's particularly innovative," he said, pointing to one of her favorite pieces. "The engineering required to maintain structural integrity while preserving the delicacy would be challenging. I solved that by creating a hidden support structure." Zara explained, growing animated. The titanium inner frame is nearly invisible, but provides the strength needed to... She stopped herself, embarrassed by her enthusiasm. Damien leaned forward. Please continue. This is exactly what interests me. For the next 20 minutes, Zara found herself explaining her design philosophy, the techniques she'd developed, and the vision she'd once had for her work. Damien listened intently, asking insightful questions that revealed both his business acumen and genuine appreciation for craftsmanship. Frost Enterprises is launching a new jewelry line next quarter, he finally said. We're focusing on innovative designs that challenge traditional perspectives while maintaining luxury appeal. Your aesthetic would be perfect. Zara blinked, certain she'd misunderstood. Are you offering me a job? I'm proposing a collaboration, Damien clarified. You would retain creative control and receive proper attribution for your designs, plus a percentage of sales. We would provide the resources, manufacturing capabilities, and marketing platform. The offer was so unexpected that Zara couldn't immediately process it. Why me? You must have access to established designers worldwide. Damien's expression turned contemplative. Established doesn't mean innovative. Your work has something I rarely see: authenticity combined with technical brilliance. It tells stories. He gestured to her sketches. These pieces don't just adorn, they transform. His words penetrated the defensive walls Richard had built around her confidence. For years, her ex-husband had insisted her designs were too unconventional and commercially unviable. He'd compared her unfavorably to other designers until she'd stopped creating altogether. My ex-husband didn't think my work had any market value, she admitted, the words escaping before she could stop them. Something hardened in Damien's eyes. Then he fundamentally misunderstood both the market and your talent. The timer on Zara's phone buzzed. Her break was over, but she felt rooted to her chair, caught at a crossroads. I can't just... This is happening too fast, she said, gathering her sketches. Take time to consider, Damien replied, handing her a folder. Here's a formal proposal outlining terms, compensation, and expectations. Review it, research our company further, and we can discuss any questions or concerns. As she returned to work, the folder tucked safely in her bag, Zara felt simultaneously terrified and exhilarated. That evening, she pored over the proposal, stunned by the generous terms. Frost Enterprises was offering an advance payment, creative, control, and prominent credit for her designs. It was everything she'd once dreamed of, and everything Richard had told her she'd never achieve. The next morning, she called the number on Damien's business card, half expecting to reach a secretary. Instead, he answered directly. I've reviewed your proposal, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. I have some questions about the timeline and intellectual property rights. Of course, he replied. I'm in meetings until 4, but could meet you afterward to discuss details. Perhaps dinner. Zara hesitated, aware that this was crossing from strictly professional into something more ambiguous. I'd prefer somewhere public. The rooftop restaurant at the Archer Hotel, 6 p.m., Damien suggested. They serve excellent food in a space that's both public and conducive to business discussion. That evening, dressed in the most professional outfit she owned, a simple black dress she'd bought for job interviews, Zara arrived at the upscale hotel. The hostess escorted her to a private table overlooking the city, where Damien was already waiting. Thank you for coming, he said, rising to greet her. The dinner progressed with professional courtesy, Damien answering each of her questions with transparent honesty. He explained how her designs would be manufactured, marketed, and distributed. The more they talked, the more Zara's excitement grew, but a lingering doubt remained. Why did you really notice me? She asked as dessert arrived. Out of all the coffee shops in Portland, why did you see me? Damien considered her question carefully. Recognition, he finally said. I recognize something in you that I understand, exceptional talent that's been convinced to hide itself. By my ex, Zara supplied, and in my case by circumstances I allowed to define me for too long. A shadow crossed his face before he redirected. The business world taught me to identify undervalued assets. You, Zara Jensen, are the most undervalued asset I've encountered in years. His words were professional, yet delivered with an intensity that made Zara wonder if there was more behind them. But she reminded herself that to Damien Frost, she was simply a business opportunity, a designer whose work could benefit his company. I'll do it, she decided, extending her hand across the table. I accept your proposal. As Damien's hand clasped hers to seal their agreement, Zara couldn't know that his interest in her talent was only the beginning, or that the decision she'd just made would not only revive her career, but challenge everything both of them believed. Glittering shadows. The transformation of Zara Jensen's life over the next 3 months was nothing short of extraordinary. From barista to lead designer for Frost Enterprises' new jewelry collection, dubbed Renaissance, in a nod to her creative rebirth. She now spent her days in a sun-drenched studio space Damien had provided in the company's Portland satellite office. Her fingers, once relegated to crafting lattes, now danced across precious metals and gemstones again. Each design she completed seemed to unlock another that had been imprisoned in her imagination during her creative drought. The collection was taking shape, 12 signature pieces that told stories of resilience, transformation, and unexpected beauty. The marketing team is ecstatic about the preview pieces, Naomi Wu, Frost's chief marketing officer, informed Zara one afternoon. Especially the Phoenix pendant, they're calling it wearable emotion. Zara smiled, running her fingers over the piece in question, a rose-gold phoenix with wings that appeared to be in mid-flight, small diamonds creating the illusion of sparks trailing behind it. She'd designed it during a late night when memories of Richard's criticism had threatened to overwhelm her. Damien mentioned you'd be joining us for the New York presentation next week, Naomi continued. It's unusual for him to bring designers to investor meetings, but he insists your perspective is essential. This was news to Zara. New York? He hasn't mentioned it to me? Typical Frost, Naomi chuckled. Probably got distracted by another acquisition. He's been in Tokyo finalizing the Hirano partnership. Due back tomorrow, though. After Naomi left, Zara tried to focus on her current project, earrings inspired by coastal tide pools, but found herself distracted by thoughts of Damien. Their relationship had evolved into something she couldn't quite define. Professionally, collaborative, certainly, with Damien providing resources and critical feedback while respecting her creative vision. But there were moments when his gaze lingered, when their conversations extended beyond business into personal territory, when she caught herself wondering if... Her phone chimed with a message from him. Just landed. Need to discuss New York. Trip. Dinner at Lumiere, 7 p.m.? Lumiere was one of Portland's most exclusive restaurants, hardly the setting for a purely professional meeting. Yet Zara had learned that Damien conducted most of his business in upscale venues, regardless of the subject matter. It meant nothing special, she reminded herself as she replied with a simple, "See you then." That evening, dressed in a forest green dress she'd purchased with her first Frost Enterprises paycheck, Zara arrived at Lumiere to find Damien already waiting. Despite having just completed a trans-Pacific flight, he looked impeccable in a tailored gray suit, his expression brightening visibly when he saw her. The Renaissance Collection's designer, he said by way of greeting, standing as she approached. You look stunning, Zara. Jet lag seems to agree with you, she replied, taking the seat a waiter held out for her. Naomi mentioned New York? Direct as always, Damien smiled. Yes, we have presentations to key investors and luxury buyers. Next week. Your presence would add considerable weight to our pitch. As they discussed logistics over expertly prepared cuisine, Zara found herself studying Damien. Despite working closely with him for months, he remained something of an enigma, brilliant and driven professionally, but guarded personally. The information Olivia had shared about his broken engagement remained the only glimpse into his private life Zara had gleaned. "You're analyzing me again," Damien observed, interrupting her thoughts. "Professional hazard," she admitted. "Designers are observers by nature. And what do you observe?" The question hung between them, loaded with potential meanings. Zara chose her words carefully. "Someone who recognizes value in others, but keeps his own closely guarded." Something flickered in Damien's eyes, surprise perhaps at her perception. He opened his mouth to respond, when a voice from behind Zara froze the blood in her veins. "Well, if it isn't my talented ex-wife." Richard Jensen stood beside their table, his handsome features arranged in the charming smile that had once made Zara's heart race, but now only triggered anxiety. At 40, he still projected the confident aura that attracted clients to his architectural firm and had once attracted her. "Richard," she acknowledged, fighting to keep her voice steady. "What? A surprise?" "Not really," he replied smoothly. "I make it a point to network at establishments like this. The surprise is seeing you here." His gaze shifted to Damien, instantly recognizing him. "Damien Frost, your reputation precedes you." "As does yours, Mr. Jensen," Damien replied coolly, standing to shake Richard's hand with practiced politeness that didn't reach his eyes. "You two know each other?" Zara asked, confused. "Not personally," Richard clarified, "but I designed the Seattle branch of Meridian Holdings last year. Frost Enterprises was bidding on the property at the time, as I recall." "We lost that bid," Damien acknowledged. "Though seeing your work up close now, perhaps that was fortunate." The subtle barb wasn't lost on Richard, whose smile tightened imperceptibly. "I see you've taken an interest in my wife's little hobby," Richard continued, gesturing toward Zara. "Ex-wife," Zara corrected firmly. "And it's not a hobby. I'm the lead designer for Frost's Renaissance collection." Richard's laugh held the condescending note she remembered all too well. "Is that what you're calling it now? Zara always had charming amateur talent, but I'm surprised a conglomerate like Frost would invest in untested designs." The familiar diminishment threatened to shrink Zara back into the insecure woman she'd been, but Damien's voice cut through Richard's undermining tactics. "Ms. Jensen's amateur talent, as you call it, is projected to generate 8 figures in revenue within the first year," Damien stated, his tone deceptively casual while his eyes remained hard. "Her Phoenix pendant alone has created unprecedented pre-order demand from buyers who've only seen preliminary sketches." Richard's expression faltered momentarily before he recovered. "Well, I always told Zara she could succeed with proper guidance. Good to see she's finally found some." "Actually," Damien continued, "what makes Miss Jensen's work exceptional is its authentic vision, free from outside interference. We provide resources, not guidance. Her genius requires no direction." The pointed rebuke hung in the air as Richard's facade of pleasant surprise gave way to thinly veiled resentment. He placed a business card on their table. "We should catch up, Zara. I'd love to hear more about this Renaissance of yours." After Richard departed, Zara released a breath. She hadn't realized she was holding. "I apologize for that interruption," she said quietly. "No apology necessary," Damien replied, his expression softening as he looked at her, "though I begin to understand certain things more clearly now." "Such as? Why someone with your extraordinary talent was making coffee instead of designing jewelry when I found you." The way he said, "found you," sent an unexpected warmth through Zara's chest. She looked down at her plate, unsure how to respond. Richard wasn't always, she began, then stopped herself. Actually, yes, he was. I just couldn't see it. He would praise my work in public, then systematically criticize it in private until I believed him instead of my own judgment. Damien's hand moved across the table, hesitating just short of touching hers. A particularly insidious form of theft, stealing someone's faith in their own vision. The understanding in his voice made Zara brave enough to ask the question that had been lingering since Olivia first mentioned his past. Is that what happened with your fiancé? Damien withdrew his hand, his expression closing like shutters. Different circumstances, similar outcome. Before Zara could respond, his phone buzzed. He checked it, frowning. I need to take this. Tokyo follow-up, he explained, standing. Please, enjoy dessert. I won't be long. While he stepped away, Zara found herself turning Richard's business card over in her fingers, wondering why he'd suddenly reappeared in her life just as it was finding new direction. The timing seemed too convenient to be coincidence. When Damien returned, his expression was troubled. Problem? She asked. Nothing concrete, he replied. Just a feeling. Richard Jensen's architectural firm has suddenly expressed interest in designing our new flagship store in Los Angeles. Zara felt a chill of recognition. That's his pattern. He inserts himself into situations where he can claim influence or connection to success. I suspected as much, Damien nodded, which makes our New York presentation even more significant. We need to establish clear public recognition of your work before he can attempt to associate himself with it. As they left the restaurant, Damien escorted Zara to her car, his hand resting lightly at the small of her back, a gesture that felt both protective and possessive. I won't let him diminish what you're building, Damien said quietly as they reached her vehicle. Your talent deserves recognition, Zara. No shadows this time. In the glow of the street lights, his expression held an intensity that made Zara wonder if they were still talking strictly about business. The line between professional collaboration and personal connection had blurred further tonight, complicated by Richard's appearance and the shared understanding of what it meant to have one's worth questioned by someone who should have valued it most. Thank you. As Damien opened her car door, his fingers brushed hers briefly. New York will be the beginning, not just for Renaissance, but for reclaiming your rightful recognition. We leave Monday morning. Driving home, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that Richard's reappearance and Damien's protective response had set something in motion, something that would test not only her reclaimed confidence, but also the careful boundaries she and Damien had maintained. The shadows of the past were reaching into her new beginning, and she wasn't certain whether to fear them or face them head-on. Breaking glass New York City pulsed with frenetic energy as Zara stood before floor-to-ceiling windows in Frost Enterprises' Manhattan headquarters. 40 stories below, yellow cabs crawled through midtown traffic like bright insects. The view was breathtaking, but it wasn't what held Zara's attention. Rather, it was the reflection she caught in the glass, herself in a tailored charcoal suit, designs from her Renaissance collection displayed on illuminated pedestals behind her, and Damien watching her from across the room with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. Nervous? He asked, approaching to stand beside her. Terrified, she admitted. I've never presented to investors before. They're just people with money and limited imagination, Damien said, his voice carrying a hint of disdain. Your work speaks for itself. All you need to do is provide context. The past 2 days had been a whirlwind. Upon arriving in New York, they'd been swept into final preparations for today's critical presentation. Potential buyers, major retailers, influential critics, and key investors would all be evaluating whether Renaissance merited the substantial backing Frost Enterprises had already committed. What if they react like Richard did? Zara asked quietly, voicing her deepest fear. What if they see my designs as amateur or derivative? Damien turned to face her directly, his proximity making her pulse quicken. Then they'll reveal themselves as fools. And I don't do business with fools. His unwavering confidence in her work had become her anchor. But it also created a dependence that sometimes troubled her. Was she merely replacing Richard's influence with Damien's? The thought had haunted her sleepless nights in her luxurious hotel suite. Mr. Frost? Naomi appeared in the doorway. They're ready for you both in the presentation hall. As they walked down the corridor, Damien surprised Zara by taking her hand and giving it a reassuring squeeze before releasing it. The brief contact sent electricity through her arm, but she forced herself to focus on the imminent presentation. The presentation hall hummed with anticipation as approximately 40 elegantly dressed individuals engaged in quiet conversation. They fell silent when Damien entered, followed by Zara. She recognized several famous faces from fashion magazines and business publications, people whose opinions could make or break careers. Ladies and gentlemen, Damien began without preamble, commanding attention effortlessly. For decades, the luxury jewelry market has been stagnant, beautiful, but predictable. Today, Frost Enterprises introduces Renaissance, not merely a collection, but a revolution in wearable art. He gestured to Zara, who stepped forward with more confidence than she felt. For the next 20 minutes, she guided the audience through her design philosophy, the technical innovations behind each piece, and the emotional narrative connecting the collection. As she spoke, her initial nervousness transformed into passionate articulation of her vision. The Phoenix pendant, she explained, highlighting the signature piece, represents transformation through adversity. Its articulated wings catch light differently with each movement, symbolizing how our perspective changes as we evolve through challenges. When she concluded, the room remained silent for 3 excruciating seconds before erupting into enthusiastic applause. What followed was a blur of handshakes, business cards, and effusive praise. Buyers from Bergdorf Goodman and Neiman Marcus requested exclusive early access. A critic from Vogue pronounced Renaissance the most innovative jewelry concept in a decade. Congratulations, Damien murmured when they finally had a moment alone amid the networking reception that followed. You've exceeded even my expectations. Before Zara could respond, her phone buzzed with a text message. Her blood chilled as she read Richard's name on the screen. Impressive presentation. We should discuss how my early mentorship shaped your aesthetic. Coffee tomorrow. I'm at the plaza. Damien, noticing her expression, leaned closer. Problem? She showed him the message, watching his jaw tighten imperceptibly. He's attempting to establish a public narrative linking himself to your success, Damien analyzed. Classic reputation parasitism. He'll tell people he inspired my designs or guided my early work, Zara agreed, feeling the familiar knot of anxiety Richard always provoked. Then we ensure the correct narrative is established first, Damien decided. The interview with Artisan. Quarterly tomorrow, we'll use it to document your creative journey accurately. Zara nodded but felt a growing unease. Richard was persistent and manipulative. He wouldn't be easily deterred. Later that evening, Damien invited Zara to a private dinner at an exclusive restaurant overlooking Central Park. As they savored exquisite cuisine, the conversation shifted from business to more personal territory. You mentioned once that you recognized something in me, Zara said, emboldened by the day's success and the intimate setting. What did you mean? Damien studied his wine glass before answering. The ability to create something extraordinary while doubting your right to do so. Is that what happened with your fiancée? Zara pressed gently. You've never spoken about her. The silence stretched long enough that Zara thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried an edge she'd never heard before. Elise Harrington. Daughter of Senator Harrington, Harvard Business School graduate, perfect social. Pedigree. His description was clinical, detached. Our engagement was strategic. Her family's political connections, my business empire. A merger of sorts. You didn't love her? Zara asked, surprised by his candor. I believed I did, Damien admitted. Until I discovered she'd been systematically selling confidential information about Frost Enterprises to competitors. The perfect fiancé was perfect corporate espionage. Zara's hand flew to her mouth. That's horrible. The betrayal was professional. And personal, he continued. She convinced me my trust issues were paranoid delusions. Meanwhile, she was exploiting that trust to undermine everything I'd built. Understanding dawned as pieces clicked into place. His initial reserve, his careful professional boundaries, his reluctance to discuss personal matters. That's why you keep people at a distance, Zara realized. Even me. Damien's gaze met hers, surprisingly vulnerable. Especially you. The admission hung between them, laden with unspoken implications. Before Zara could respond, Damien's phone rang. His expression darkened as he took the call, speaking in terse sentences before hanging up. That was our legal department, he informed her. Richard Jensen has filed a claim asserting co-creation rights to several of your Renaissance designs. He's alleging you developed the concepts during your marriage, making them marital intellectual property. The room seemed to tilt as panic rose in Zara's chest. That's absurd. He actively discouraged my work. He has no proof. He has photographs, Damien interrupted grimly. Apparently of early sketches similar to your current designs, dated during your marriage. Impossible, Zara insisted, then hesitated as a memory surfaced. Unless I had sketchbooks he kept after the divorce, said they had been damaged in storage. I never saw them again. He could have altered dates, created fabricated early versions of your current work, Damien theorized. It's legally tenuous, but potentially damaging to the collection's launch. Zara felt her hard-won confidence crumbling. This is exactly what he wants, to make me doubt myself again, to insert himself into my success. We won't let that happen, Damien stated with cold determination. I'll have our legal team prepare a countersuit for harassment and fraudulent claims. But Zara shook her head, a strange calm replacing her initial panic. No, that's what he expects, a legal battle that keeps him connected to me and to Renaissance. There's a better way. What do you suggest? Complete transparency, she decided. I still have my original design journals from before I met Richard, and the true evolution of my aesthetic is documented in pieces I created before our marriage. Pieces I sold at local galleries. Can you locate the buyers? Damien asked, following her reasoning. Some, yes. And the gallery owner documented everything meticulously. Zara straightened her shoulders, resolve strengthening her voice. Instead of hiding from Richard's claims, we showcase my entire journey, including how he undermined my confidence and creativity. We turn his attack into part of the Renaissance story. Damien's expression transformed from concern to admiration. Brilliant. Not just defensive, but authentic. As they developed the strategy further, Zara realized something had fundamentally shifted between them. Damien had revealed his deepest vulnerability, and she was confronting her greatest fear, Richard's continued power over her narrative. They were no longer merely business associates, but allies against similar wounds. When Damien escorted her back to her hotel room, they paused at her door. Thank you, she said softly, for believing in my work when I couldn't. Your talent was always there, he replied. I merely provided the platform it deserved. His gaze dropped to her lips momentarily before he stepped back, maintaining the professional boundary he'd established months ago. But Zara, emboldened by the day's victories and revelations, made a decision. Damien, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, We've both let people who betrayed us define our boundaries for too long. Before he could respond, she closed the distance between them, placing her hand gently against his cheek. I'm not Elise, and you're not Richard. The simple truth hung between them for a breathless moment before Damien's restraint finally broke. His lips met hers with unexpected gentleness that quickly deepened into something more urgent. Months of carefully maintained professionalism dissolving in an instant of shared understanding. When they finally separated, his forehead resting against hers, Damien spoke in a voice rough with emotion. I've wanted to do that since you first showed me your designs at the Copper Cup. Zara smiled, feeling truly seen for perhaps the first time. We have a battle to win tomorrow, she reminded him. Richard won't give up easily. Let him try, Damien replied, his eyes reflecting a fierce protectiveness. What he never understood about you, what I recognized immediately, is that your greatest creations come from overcoming those who underestimated you. As she closed her hotel room door, Zara leaned against it, touching her lips where Damien's had been moments before. Tomorrow would bring confrontation with Richard and a fight for her creative legacy. But for the first time, she would face these challenges not as the diminished version of herself that Richard had cultivated, but as the designer Damien had recognized from the beginning, and more importantly, the woman she had finally allowed herself to become. Royal Reflections. The morning. Sun streamed through the windows of Frost Enterprises' New York headquarters as Zara meticulously arranged her evidence. Spread across the conference table were her original design journals, photographs of pieces she'd created before meeting Richard, and testimonials from gallery owners who had exhibited her early work. Each item was another link in the chain of truth she was forging. The legal team will be here in 20 minutes, Damien said, entering with 2 cups of coffee. He placed one beside her, his fingers lingering against hers in a brief, reassuring touch. How are you feeling? Strangely calm, Zara replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. For years I lived in fear of Richard's judgment. Now I'm finally ready to face it. Damien studied her with admiration. The woman before him bore little resemblance to the hesitant barista he'd discovered months ago. This Zara stood tall, her eyes clear and determined, her creativity no longer hidden but radiating from her like light. There's something you should see before the others arrive, he said, retrieving a tablet from his briefcase. Our digital team has been tracking social media since yesterday's presentation. The screen displayed a stunning visualization, thousands of sparkling dots representing mentions of Renaissance across social platforms, forming the shape of a phoenix in flight. Each point represents someone talking about your designs, Damien explained. Renaissance is trending globally. The Phoenix pendant has already been featured in 3 major fashion publications overnight. Zara's breath caught. It's beautiful. It's vindication, Damien corrected gently. Your vision, connecting with people exactly as you intended. No, one can take that away. Certainly not Richard. Before she could respond, Naomi entered with an urgent expression. Richard Jensen is downstairs, demanding to see you both. He's threatening to go to the press with his claims if you refuse. Damien's jaw tightened, but Zara placed a calming hand on his arm. Let him come up, she decided. Better to address this directly than let him control the narrative. Minutes. Later, Richard strode into the conference room with the practiced confidence of someone accustomed to intimidating others into submission. He was impeccably dressed in an Italian suit that signaled success, but his eyes betrayed surprise at finding Zara so composed. Zara, Damien, he greeted them with forced cordiality. I'd hoped we could resolve this matter privately, but your legal team has been less than cooperative. There's nothing to resolve, Richard, Zara replied evenly. The Renaissance collection is entirely my creation, designed long after our divorce. Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes as he placed a leather portfolio on the table. These sketches suggest otherwise, Early concepts clearly showing the phoenix motif dated during our marriage. As your husband at the time, I provided both financial support and creative direction for these pieces. He opened the portfolio to reveal sketches that did indeed resemble her current designs, though cruder in execution. The dates written in the corners corresponded to their marriage. Interesting forgeries, Damien commented, his voice deceptively casual. Quite convincing. Richard's expression hardened. I assure you they're authentic. Zara always had potential, but her designs lacked commercial viability until I helped refine her approach. The Renaissance collection clearly evolved from concepts we developed together. We? Zara echoed, her voice steady despite the familiar anxiety Richard's presence provoked. Tell me, Richard, what specific contribution did you make to these designs? The question caught him off guard. I provided critical feedback on proportion, marketability, materials. You mean like when you told me the asymmetrical elements would never sell? Zara interrupted, opening one of her journals. Or when you said my use of mixed metals showed amateur indecision. These are your exact words, which I recorded here. She pushed the journal toward him, open to a page where she documented his criticisms in painful detail. Richard's confidence faltered momentarily. Creative development involves honest critique, he defended. I was helping you improve. By telling me I had no talent? Zara challenged, her voice gaining strength. By hiding my sketchbooks? By convincing gallery owners not to display my work because it wasn't ready? Richard's composure cracked further. That's an exaggeration. I was protecting you from premature exposure. Fortunately, Damien interjected, we have evidence that contradicts your narrative. He gestured to the materials Zara had assembled. Authenticated design journals predating your marriage, showing the evolution of concepts you're now claiming. Credit for statements from gallery owners confirming your interference with Zara's exhibitions. And most damning, he slid forward a document with Richard's signature. Your divorce settlement, specifically stating you make no claim to any of Zara's creative works, past or future. The color drained from Richard's face as he realized the trap he'd walked into. His claims weren't just contestable, they were potentially actionable. I could still create problems for the launch, he threatened, though his voice lacked conviction. Public doubt about authorship could damage buyer confidence. You could, Zara acknowledged, surprising both men with her calm. But then we would be forced to release these materials publicly, including your documented pattern of undermining my career. How would that affect your architectural firm's reputation? Your clients might question your professional ethics. The implied threat hung in the air as Richard reassessed his position. For the first time, Zara saw uncertainty in his eyes, the same uncertainty he had so often created in her. What do you want? He finally asked. A signed statement acknowledging you have no claim to any of my designs, Zara said simply. And your promise to never contact me again. And if I refuse? Damien leaned forward. Then Frost Enterprises will pursue legal action for attempted fraud, defamation, and tortious interference with business relationships. Our counsel estimates potential damages in the 8-figure range. Richard's facade finally crumbled completely. He was a bully confronted by opponents who refused to be intimidated, a novel and disorienting experience for him. I'll need to consult my attorney, he muttered. Of course, Damien agreed smoothly. Our legal team has already prepared the necessary documents. They're waiting in the adjacent conference room with your attorney who arrived 15 minutes ago. Richard's head snapped up in surprise. You contacted my lawyer? We believe in thorough preparation, Damien replied with a cold smile. Unlike your hasty forgeries. Defeated, Richard gathered his fabricated evidence and followed Naomi to the other conference room. When the door closed behind him, Zara released a shaky breath. He never expected me to fight back, she realized. In all our years together, I never did. Damien took her hand, his touch grounding her. He's built his self-image on people believing his distortions. You just shattered that. Mirror. 2 hours later, Richard Jensen left Frost Enterprises with his reputation intact, but his power over Zara permanently broken. The signed agreement was comprehensive, ensuring he could never again attempt to claim credit for her work or interfere with her career. "It's over," Zara whispered as she watched his car pull away from the building. "Really over?" "No." 6 weeks later, the Renaissance collection launched to unprecedented acclaim. The Phoenix pendant became an instant icon, with waiting lists extending months for the limited edition piece. Fashion magazines hailed Zara Jensen as jewelry's newest visionary, with Vogue declaring her work a revelation in an industry desperate for authentic innovation. The official launch event was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, with celebrities, fashion icons, and industry leaders gathering to celebrate. As Zara circulated through the crowd, accepting congratulations and discussing her creative process, she occasionally caught glimpses of Damien watching her from across the room, pride evident in his expression. They had maintained professional boundaries in public since that night in New York, focusing on the collection's launch while privately exploring the deepening connection between them. Both carried scars from past betrayals that made trust a conscious daily choice rather than a given. Near midnight, as the event reached its conclusion, Damien stepped onto the small stage where Zara's signature pieces were displayed in illuminated cases. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice commanding immediate attention, "tonight we celebrate not just exceptional jewelry, but the triumph of authentic vision over doubt." The crowd quieted as he continued. "When I first discovered Zara Jensen's work, I recognized something rare in today's market. Designs born from genuine emotional truth rather than market trends. What I couldn't have anticipated was how her creativity would transform not just Frost Enterprises, but the entire concept of luxury jewelry." His gaze found Zara's in the crowd, holding it as he spoke his next words. "The Renaissance collection represents rebirth, the emergence of one's true self after a period of dormancy. It reminds us that sometimes our greatest potential remains hidden until someone refuses to let us diminish our own light." Damien raised his glass. "To Zara Jensen, the queen who shapes our vision of beauty, whose courage in reclaiming her voice enriches us all." The room erupted in applause as Zara made her way to the stage, emotion threatening to overwhelm her. This moment, standing before the world with her creations celebrated rather than dismissed, had once seemed impossible. "Thank you all," she said when the applause subsided. Renaissance began as personal healing but evolved into something greater. These pieces tell stories of transformation, how broken things can be reformed into something more beautiful than before. Her eyes met Damien's as she concluded. "And how sometimes the most precious thing someone can give you is the courage to believe your own worth." Later, as the last guests departed, Zara and Damien stood alone among her creations, the museum, silent around them. "Your speech," she said softly. "You called me a queen." "Because you are," he replied without hesitation. "Not because of my validation or the world's acclaim, but because you finally recognized your own sovereignty." Zara touched the phoenix pendant at her throat, the physical manifestation of her journey from diminishment to empowerment. "For years, I believed what Richard told me about my talent, my worth. I made myself smaller to accommodate his insecurities. And now?" Damien asked, taking her hand. "Now I understand that true value isn't determined by others' assessments," she answered. "Whether in business or in love." Damien's expression softened as he drew her closer. "When I first saw your designs, I recognized exceptional talent, but these past months, watching you reclaim your voice and stand against those who tried to silence it, that's when I fell in love with the woman, not just the artist. The admission, spoken plainly in the quiet museum, held none of the calculation or strategic consideration that had characterized his previous relationship. This was raw truth, offered without expectation. "I think I began falling for you the moment you defended my work to Richard," Zara admitted. "Not because I needed defending, but because you saw something in me worth fighting for when I'd forgotten how to fight for myself." "We're both works in progress," Damien acknowledged, his fingers intertwining with hers. "Learning to trust after betrayal doesn't happen overnight." "Maybe that's the final piece of Renaissance," Zara suggested. "Not just reclaiming what was lost, but creating something entirely new from the experience." As Damien leaned down to kiss her, surrounded by the physical manifestations of her reborn creativity, Zara realized the true transformation wasn't in the jewelry that bore her name or the acclaim that now followed it. It was in her willingness to believe in her own value, and to accept love from someone who saw that value not as something he assigned to her, but as something intrinsic that had always been there waiting to shine. The phoenix pendant caught the light as they embraced, its wings seemingly in motion, a perfect symbol of how they had each emerged from the ashes of past betrayals, not diminished but refined, ready to soar together into possibilities neither had dared imagine before finding the other. 6 months later, as Zara put the finishing touches on her second collection for Frost Enterprises, a small velvet box appeared on her workbench. Inside lay a ring, unlike any other. A perfect miniature of her phoenix pendant, redesigned as an engagement ring, with a note in Damien's handwriting. "To the queen who taught me that true worth is never determined by those who cannot see it, only recognized by those who refuse to let it remain hidden. Will you continue this renaissance with me?" Her answer, like her journey from invisible to celebrated, was both an ending and a beginning, the final transcendence from someone once told. She was worth nothing to a woman who now knew, without doubt,